It's your open source advocate, and I'm back with another video, and I do apologize, but it is hot today, and I am going to have my air conditioner running in the background because it is just too hot to not have it running. I apologize if there's noise being picked up. I tried to get the mic in the best position to not have that happen. But today I want to go over some ERP and CRM for business software that's open source called Dolibarr. So in the past I've covered ERP Next. It was pretty popular. A lot of you have asked me a lot of questions about it. I'm going to give you the same caveat that I gave when I did that one. This is really more about an installation, how to get this installed and running on your own hardware or on self-hosted setup if you want to do that. If you want to test it out, they have a demo page here, so you can go try out their demo and find out what Dolibarr is all about. I highly recommend that you go do that if you want to do that. Now, the system that I'm going to set up for the video, I will leave it up and running, and we will see how everything works. And I'll leave it up for about a month. It's probably not going to be up for much longer than that. So if you get to this video at some point and you look at the date when it was released and it's more than a month after that, you can try the URL that I'll give on the video, but it may not work. So just understand that I only leave these up for about a month and then I get rid of them because I've got other things that I want to do and other videos that I'm going to make, and I need that space back sometimes. But if you want their demo, they do have a live demo. Also, if you're concerned about support, if you want them to support you, then you can absolutely pay these guys for support. Even though it's open source software that you can run for absolutely free. I want to be clear about this because people have always come back and said, well, here it is. You did the rope-a-dope. You told me it was free, and then you said, here's how you pay for it. Every open source project has some way to support itself. If it's a project that's going to last, they have to find some way to monetize and support their efforts so that you know that it will be there long term, so that you know you can get support if you need it. If you don't feel like you need that right out of the gate, you don't have to get it. But if you're doing this for a large company or a large business, then it's something you may want. Just be aware of that. There's lots of benefits to having open source software in the enterprise. I know a lot of people think, oh no, I want to use Microsoft Dynamics. Well, Microsoft Dynamics costs a lot of money. Microsoft Dynamics is a nice project and a nice product, but it's got some definite downsides too. It's very complex and very, very hard to use, in my opinion. I have used it, and again, I'm not a CRM ERP person, but I have used Dynamics, and it's massive, and it's not easy. While it's got some pretty cool stuff, it may be worth looking at an open source project like Dolibarr or ERP Next, to see if that's something that might fit you better. Now, ERP Next is ERP only as far as I know. It may do some CRM stuff, but Dolibarr is definitely ERP and CRM. Now, they say for business, but again, it is free and open source. You can go get it and you can run it, and they have some really great ways to update that software. And you can run it bare metal, like on a Debian or Ubuntu system. You can run it in a virtual machine. You can run it on Windows, I think. You can run it in a lot of different ways. Today we're going to run it in Docker because I love Docker. I think Docker is a great way to go. It frees up resources that you didn't have to use. You didn't have to create an entire virtual machine just to run something. And there's a pretty nice looking image out there for Docker. I have not tried it, so we're gonna figure out together if it really works as easily as it says it will. But we'll go through it together and kind of see how that goes. So if you scroll down on the Dolibarr main site, which I'll have linked in the description and in the show notes, you'll kind of see what they say about the project and the product. And you'll see some of the features that they have here, which it looks like a pretty nice, pretty nice set of features that they've got. And you can just kind of keep going down. There's more features. So I've got the screen kind of zoomed up just to make it easier for you guys that are looking at this on your phone to read. But really, I mean, look at this. They've got 13.0.3 is the version as of today. Now, depending on when you see this, there may be newer versions out there. But the one that I see was updated on 6/19 of 2021. So that was just a few days ago from the day that I'm recording. If you look at, I mean, they've just got pages and pages and pages of information, and then they've got community, they've got videos. Okay, so they're going to show you a lot of stuff. They've got some really cool stuff that really makes it nice whenever you have an open source project like this. And again, they can monetize. And if you need to pay somebody, like if you're like, hey, this guy made a great video, I'm gonna email him and ask him if he'll help me get this set up. I'm gonna tell you now, no, you can watch my video and follow the steps that I'm following. But if you're having problems, you can ask me a question. I don't mind that. I will always try to help you if you ask me a question. But I have a full-time job. I do this video stuff on the weekends, and really it takes up a lot of my time, and I have a family, so I don't want to do any contracting right now. I appreciate that you guys would think to reach out to me to ask me to do it. But just know that the Dolibarr themselves have options where you can pay them to help you, or you can pay them to host it, or you can pay them for support. So if you're going to pay me, be willing to reach out to the open source project and be willing to pay them so that they can continue the project going forward, and you'll know that you have a strong product as it moves forward in time. All right, all that said, let's get into installing this thing and we'll kind of figure out what's going on. So I'm going to jump over to Dockerhub, and I found this one that is Tuxgusy, I guess is how you say this, and his image for Dolibarr. And the thing I always look for when I look at Dockerhub is how long ago was this created? So this is 20 hours ago. He updated this thing 20 hours ago, which tells me, this guy might be really, invested, or this woman might be invested in this thing, which is great. If I see one that says 7 years ago and it hasn't been updated in that time, either it's a really easy thing to keep it just on the latest version no matter how you run it or when you run the Docker thing, or the person did it and they just lost interest and they decided not to keep it going. So I always look for official Docker images because I feel like that'll be supported more, but I haven't found one from Dolibarr yet. I found some stuff on their forums where people have asked for that, but they have not apparently done that yet. So Dolibarr, if you happen to see this, you might reach out to this person to say, hey, we like what you did, or hey, we'd like to help, and see if they're willing to keep this up for you, or help you get one going for yourself if this all works. So we're going to find out. So it gives you the tags right out of the gate. If you haven't used Docker before, you'll want to install Docker on whatever machine you're going to run this on. And then you'll want to, make sure you've got Docker Compose, because it gives you a nice Docker Compose file down here. And I'll tell you now, let me go out here to my link. So we're going to go to github.com/bmcgonag. And then it's Docker installs, I think. Is that what I called it? We'll find out. No, it didn't like that. So let's just go to my main repository and then we'll find it. Let's see here. We'll go here. And we will find our Docker installs repository right here. Docker installs. I guess I just typed it wrong. So it is called Docker installs, and depending on what you're running as your base system, I've got a few different options out here where it's just a script that helps you get Docker installed, basically. So you can run this script and it'll install Docker for you, and it'll install Docker Compose, and it'll get your user set up to be a Docker user. And then you can just basically start installing Docker containers and using Docker Compose right out of the gate. So it's a one-run script kind of thing. You don't have to do a lot to it. You just run it and let it go. And as long as there's no errors, you're set. You might need to reboot after you do it just to get everything to take effect, or log out, log back in, whatever. But other than that, this is the way that it goes pretty easily. So I just did this to make this easier. I've got a few different kinds of distros, but if you'd like to see more, please feel free to grab this, copy it, fix it up for whatever distro you run most of the time, and then do a pull request so I can pull this thing in and actually add to this library. I'd really love that. I'd appreciate it very much. So now that you know that this is here, I'll link this as well so you can get to it. You can get Docker installed and set up pretty easily. So as we continue down, we get to his sample, basically dockercompose.yaml file. So this is really great that it's got this. If you're a Portainer user, you can just probably copy this thing into Portainer under a stack and get it going. So I'm going to copy all the way down. There we go. Get it all the way down to there. I'm just going to copy this right now. I'm not going to use it yet, but we'll look at it. So he's using version 3 Docker Compose. And as you look down, you can kind of see what he's got set up. So he's setting up MariaDB, and he just says go get the latest version. And then he sets up MySQL root password. So you can change this. It should not be root. Don't use that as your root password. And then MySQL database, whatever you want to call it. But most likely Dolibarr is the best, because then you can find it if you actually have to get into the SQL at any point for any reason. Next, we've got web, is what he calls this. So you can name this whatever you want, really. But then you have the image. So that's going to be his image, which is Dolibarr from Tuxgusy here. The environment variables that you're setting up. So he's got several that we can actually use. And I'll make this a little bit larger on the screen. I apologize. It is a little bit small for you guys that are on the phones. Here you go. So you've got the DOLI_DB. So he starts all of his environment variables with DOLI except this one. So it says Dolly DB host MariaDB. So that's referring to this container up here. So you're going to get two images and set up two containers that are set up and networked together. So MariaDB. The user, you can change this user if you want to. He's setting up a user. You'd have to set up whatever the user is you want from MariaDB instead of root. But if you leave what he has here, you need to set up root as the user, and then make sure your password matches this password up here. So make sure these two match exactly. The DB name, make sure those two things match exactly. and then your URL root. So he sets 0000, which basically means just let it be whatever. It doesn't matter. But if you want to set up something else, you can. If you know what the root URL is going to be, you can set that up. And then he's setting up his date time zone. So he has Europe/Paris. For me, it would be America/Chicago. So you need to find out what your time zone is, and you can set that environment variable as well. You can leave this out if you don't want to use it, or you can set UTC. It's really up to you what you do there. And then he's got a couple of ports mapped, or he's got a port mapped here. So he's got 80 going to 80. In my case, depending on where you install this, if 80 is not free, you might want to change the left side. So inside of Docker, you can say, I'm gonna port forward a different port to this port 80 inside the container. So you could do 8199 to 80. And then you just need to know when you go to this application, you're going to go to this URL :8199. And we'll go through that. I would also probably go ahead and map 443 on the container side, and then same thing here. But we can make all that happen with like NGinX Proxy Manager, so we'll get into that as well. And then of course links is MariaDB, so it's saying, link my main, sorry about my scrolling, link my main container to my MariaDB container in the background there. So that's pretty nice, right? He's got everything set. He tells you run docker compose up-d afterwards to get it going, and then go to your URL to actually access your site. So he says you can run it with MySQL Server, you can run it with Traffic Proxy, you can run it with Dolibarr, with secrets. It's really kind of up to you how you run these things. So he's got some links on other examples, which is pretty great. He's got how you can upgrade the version and migrate the DB. And then he's got the environment variables that you can use. So he doesn't include all of those up above, but you can absolutely use these things as well. You can use MySQL as the host. You can use 3306 as the port in that case. So just lots of really useful stuff here. You can use Dolly as the DB user instead of the other setup that he had. So as we go down, once we get past the environment variables, he's got a little bit more information about things that you can do as far as a secrets file if you want to, but you don't have to. So that's really kind of the setup. We're going to go through this right now. So I've got that copied, and I'm going to open up a terminal window. All right, there we are. So I'm going to clear that out, and I'm just going to go ahead and create a folder. So I'm going to do mkdir dolibarr. So I always create a folder for where I'm going to start putting in a compose file that's separate from all the other folders. And I'm going to cd into that folder, so right there. And I'm just going to do an ls. It's empty, you can see that. Now I'm going to basically create a new file. So I'm going to say nano, and we're going to do docker-compose.yml. So we're going to create this text file, and you see there it is. And I'm just going to paste in what I copied earlier, and you can see here that it's gotten pasted in. We're going to go check out all of the formatting. So here we go. Everything here looks okay. There's Dolibarr as the name of the database. And down here, I'm not going to leave the password as root, but you can make this whatever you want. You should really make it a strong password. Don't make it a weak password like the one I'm about to use. But there you go. We've got our password there, and we've got, so our user matches. Our user here needs to match our user here, and our database name here needs to match our database name here. So you can change this database name if you want, but you need to change it here. And you can change this username, but you need to change it here. And then you need to set up what the password is for the MySQL password if you want to have that. So you've got a few different environment variables you have to add here if you want to do this with MariaDB. So just be aware of that. Down here, so we can change this to be something else. We may not want our URL to be 0000. So in this case, I'm going to make this http:// and we're going to call this dolly.opensourceisawesome.com. And then I'm going to change my time zone here to, for me, it's America/Chicago. And then the port I'm going to change to 8199, just like I said earlier. And then MariaDB is there. So I'm going to save this with Control-O. And then I'm going to get out of it with Control-X. And before we move forward, I need to go set up my actual A record for that URL. So I own opensourceisawesome.com. So I own the domain opensourceisawesome.com, and I'm going to come here to my DNS settings, and I'm going to add an A record. So it's already set to A, but if you wanted to add something else, you can pick something else from that list. And then I called that DOLI for the host name. And then I need the IP address that I'm going to send this to. And in this case, it's already set as my main opensourceisawesome.com IP. So I'm just gonna type in the @ symbol, and I'll show you what it looks like here in a minute. And I can even make this like a CNAME record, honestly. It doesn't have to be @, so I can call this DOLI and @. Now, if you don't have something proper set up that you're going to need, like your main domain is not already set up to the right IP address, you would create an A record just like I was going to do, and then you can tell it to point to a certain IP address. So we can go here, and I'll kind of show you. This is the IP address of my server, and I want to send all of my traffic to that server. So if I just copy that, we'll just create the A record for now. It's a little bit of a pain, but it's okay. So we're going to create, not Holly, Dolly, and we're going to just paste in that IP address, and then I want this to update in the next 5 minutes, and we'll save it. Now, the other way you can find out what your server IP is if you don't know for some reason, you can go into your terminal and you can ping your URL, and it'll come back and tell you what it finds as far as the IP address there. So that should also help you get that set up. So we see we have our docker compose.yaml file here. We've set up our A record for Dolly, so we can ping that and say doli.opensourceisawesome.com and make sure that it pings back to the right address, which it does. So great. So now we should just be able to run our docker compose up-d. So we're going to run docker-compose up. Now, if you just run it with up and not the -d, then you're going to get a bunch of output to the screen, but I like to do this the first time to make sure that I'm seeing that everything is getting created correctly and that it seems to be up and running and there's no errors. If I see errors, that tells me I need to go fix something. When you do the -d, this runs it as a daemon, which means it downloads and installs everything, and then it starts running, and it just goes back to your prompt, and you don't really know if there's an error or not unless you have some other tool to kind of check, or you know how to check those errors in Docker Compose. So the first time I run these things, I like to just run them as Docker Compose up. So this is basically going to go out and say, you know what, I want to pull down these images. So it's going to pull down the MariaDB image, which is what it's doing right now. And then it's going to extract all the pieces for that image that it needs to build it. And once it's got them extracted, it's going to basically say pull complete. And then once we've got the pull complete, you can see it kind of did a screen tear. I don't think these are actually running anymore. So once it gets to the end there, it's going to start up the MariaDB one, and it should start pulling down the Dolibarr. There we go. So it finished up with MariaDB, and now you can see it's pulling down the images for Dolibarr. So it's pulling down all the stuff that it needs. So basically, when you create these images, you have to tell the Docker system, like, hey, here's some other things that I need, some dependencies. So it'll go grab those things and set them up as well. So now it's going to extract all of the things that it downloaded. And once it extracts those things, again, you'll see that it should finish and come up and running. We'll kind of see what it does, but it'll output everything to the terminal since we ran it without the -d flag. I just realized I'm probably going to hit an error because I didn't change my password in the second part of the Docker Compose file. But we'll let this finish because it's just pulling down the images, and then once they're down, it's a lot easier to get it started back up here in a minute. And we're going to clear this, and we're going to do nano docker compose.yaml. So right here where it says MySQL, so he's using MySQL root password, that's okay. We can use that as well. And you need to make sure that whenever you do YAML, you get the right spacing. So we can just create a user for MySQL, and we can call this Dolibarr. And then, again, just take off the DB part, password, and this is PASSW0RD #1. And then we're going to come down, and you can see he's got DoliDB user. And we're going to call this DOLIBARR, and then that is still our password for our password, which is great. Everything there should be good now, so we're correcting a little bit of a potential problem. So I'm going to say Control-O, enter, and then Control X to exit. Clear that out. Now we're going to do Docker compose up-d. So I just wanted to get rid of those containers that we started earlier and let it just recreate the containers completely. And again, we'll just do up so we can kind of see the messages as it goes. It doesn't have to pull down the images again, so don't worry about that. It's just going to recreate the containers completely to make sure there's not something hung there. Alright, so here we can see that it's importing data to the tables in MariaDB, so this is a good sign that it's importing everything that we need. So we're just going to let this guy run. So if you run this with -d right off the bat, notice how long this is taking to actually get up and started, so don't get frustrated if you try to log in right away and you can't, because the system is still building itself out and setting up the database for the first time that we're running this. So be patient. Looks like it may have finished. Now I'm running this on SSDNodes, so it is a little bit slower than anything I run on DigitalOcean, but much less expensive. So just be aware. It may go faster if you're running it on something like DigitalOcean or Linode. But again, if you're running it with -d right away, it may not come up right away. You need to give it a couple of minutes to finish. That took about 3 minutes maybe to finish. So just be patient. So with NGinX Proxy Manager, what you're doing is saying, hey, I've got a single entry point into my server, and then my Proxy Manager is going to handle how it redirects traffic based on whatever URL is requested. So I've got a lot of URLs built up in here. So I have a lot of servers that I run on here. So if we go over and look at Portainer for this site, you can see that I've got a lot of stuff running here, and I've got a couple of things not even running. So I've got about 24 different containers that are running different servers and services, and some of them are, some of them work together, but Dolibarr is now one of those things. So what I have to do is tell NGinX Proxy Manager, hey, I need you to route this request for dolibarr.opensourceisawesome.com to the right container. So we're going to go set up a new proxy here, a new host entry. And I'm going to call that exactly what I called it in my site, doli.opensourceisawesome.com. I'm going to hit tab so that I get that little chip. And then I'm going to put on here the actual container address for that. So I need to go find what that is. So you can do this a couple of ways. You can actually just get it from Portainer if you have Portainer running. If not, you can do it in the CLI by looking at the network information for Docker, and Docker has good documentation on how to do that. I'll try to remember to put it in the show notes as well. So if you want to know how, go check the show notes, but Portainer makes it really easy. So what we want is the information for Dolibarr web. We're going to scroll down here and look at what its IP address is. So it's on the 18, the 172.18 system. So I'm gonna use the gateway version and the port number for it. I could probably use this, but I don't know that it would work. We can try it though. Let's go give it a shot. So I'm going to go back into here and start adding that host again. And I'm going to put in, before I forget, so I'm going to do dolly.opensourceisawesome.com, and I'm going to set this. I'm going to set this to the gateway, and I'm going to use that. I'm going to use the forwarding port here, which is 8199, and I want that to forward to port 80. I'm going to set up WebSocket support, and I'm going to block any exploit stuff, and then I'm going to set up my cache assets. I'm going to make this publicly accessible. Now, before I go further, I'm just going to make sure that this is good, and I'm going to save. And there we go. We've got Dolibarr working. Great. And I don't have a user yet, and I don't see a way to create a user. Let's just see what happens if I try this. So it tells me immediately bad value. So there's no password forgotten, there's no, support kind of stuff that's going to help me at this point, but there's no register either. So I think we need to go back to our Docker Compose file and create that. So we'll clear this out, we'll nano Docker Compose again, and if we go back and look at this screen, he's got some things to set up our user. As I recall, admin login right here and admin password. So we can use these two environment variables in our setup to actually help us get logged in. So let's go and change that. So we're just going to go down here And we'll go right here and we'll go out. So this is going to be DOLI admin login, and we'll just call this Brian. And again, we'll make another line, go out here with spaces and admin password, and we'll just call this another strong password. You want a strong password, seriously. So we'll put that in quotes. We'll see if that messes it up with the quotes. I don't think it will. We'll save. We'll exit. So what I'm going to do though is to get this to take, I'm going to put it as Docker compose down. So I actually want to take down my containers. I'm going to remove the existing containers and then we'll restart those containers. Alright, so here we're going to go with Docker, let's see, Docker RM, Dolibarr, should find it. Maybe I got rid of them already. Nothing. Okay, so they're gone. Cool. So we're going to recreate this thing. So we're going to do clear. And we're going to do Docker compose up-d. So it creates a network for us, which is nice. And then it's going to add on MariaDB. And then it's going to open up the Dolibarr web. And it should tell us done when it's done here in a second. And then we'll give it a second and we'll check the logs. So we can do Docker compose logs. Yeah, so it's getting the database to go first. So this is going to be kind of like the first time we ran it. It's going to take a little bit longer. So we can just keep checking the logs. This is another nice thing about Portainer. If I jumped over to Portainer, I could just keep an eye on the logs while it's starting up. So we can actually go look at Portainer as well. And we can just refresh, make sure we've got the latest stuff here. And if we look at Dolibarr Web 1, we can just go here. Let's see, we can check out logs. And we can see that it's moving, it's going through and doing all the stuff that it needs to do for the SQL. So it's importing all of our SQL tables. And it just refreshes on its own about every 3 or 4 seconds, which is great. We don't have to keep hitting the Dolibarr logs command. Alright, so we can see in our messages that it finished up. So we're going to go back over and we're going to try to access it here first just to make sure we can get to it. My mouse kind of freaked out. So we're going to go to opensourceisawesome.com:8819. And it takes us to Dolibarr. Now we set up Brian and password #1. Let's see. And it logs us in. Awesome. So we've got that set up, but we're still going through HTTP. So now we need to solve another problem, which is how to get us a Let's Encrypt certificate so that we can have HTTPS instead of HTTP. So for that, we want to open up our NGinX Proxy Manager. And we're going to go back into here and we're going to set up SSL. So I'm going to hit edit for that entry that I just made. And I'm going to go over here to the SSL tab and I'm going to say request a new certificate. I'm going to check force SSL so that users can't log in through the non-SSL version. And I'm going to make sure my email address is in here and I'm going to accept the terms of service for Let's Encrypt. And then I'm going to hit save. So this is going to go out to Let's Encrypt. It's going to say, hey, I've got this site and I want to get a certificate for it. Challenge it, make sure that you can reach it, make sure that it looks like everything's good there, and then issue the Let's Encrypt certificate for the site that I'm running. So it takes just a second. You can see it spinning there, but if this dialog goes away without any error messages, then we can feel pretty good that it got the certificates set up, and we can click here again, and now it should take us to the HTTPS version. And there we can see the lock is set, and we can click it, and we can see HTTPS, and we don't have any warnings about our certificates. So now we have valid certificates, and we're using Dolibarr with an HTTPS system. So if I increase the font on this actual screen here, we can see that they've got a nice little dashboard. This is the dashboard, I'm sure, and yeah, so everything here. So they tell you here's some things you need to set up. You need to set up company and organization, and then you're going to want to set up some modules and applications. So basically how to extend this thing. So we'll go through the setup here in just a minute, and we'll start trying to see if we can get Dolibarr kind of set up and running. So let's just click into this part. take a quick look at what we've got. So we're just going to call this, we'll just call this OSIA. The address is going to be 100 my way. And zip code. Yeah, we can put it in or not put it in. It doesn't look like it's a required field. So we can just go all the way down. You can check all these things and you can see how everything gets set up. Euros is how it's set as the currency. I am American dollars, so let's just put, let's see, okay, it's got AU dollars. Let's do US. Not there. Wow. There it is. Yeah, I don't know why it didn't come up. Okay, US dollars, phone number. You've got quite a bit of information you can put in here. If you have a logo, you can upload a logo. Nice. And then you can put in some notes. Managers and CEO. Brian, that's me. Data protection officer. You know, whoever you want. Brian. This is a one-man operation, right? Capital. So let's just say $20 a month. Not 20 million. $20 a month. So set the country first if you want to do business entity type. So you have to do a whole bunch of other things here. So let's go back and set our country since I didn't do that. Country, United States. State, province, I am in Texas. Whoops, whoa, what happened? There we go. Texas, right there. So let's see if that updated our fields. Yeah, so here's our business entity type. Okay, so I haven't entered any business entity types. I can't pick any apparently. Professional identity, VAT ID, object of the company, to share knowledge about open source software. There we go. January is the start month. So type of sales tax. Yeah, so this is a full-on system that's going to give you a lot of functionality. I'm not going to fill out everything because you guys don't want to watch me fill out everything in a system. It did give me an error. The information of your company organization, click the save button at the bottom of the page. I guess it gave me an error. I don't know. I don't see an error. Oh yeah, there it goes. So saved up here in the upper right. I just wasn't paying attention. So modules and applications is the next part. So you can kind of check out what they have here. So they have users and groups, members, leave request management, and expense reports. So this is available applications. They have external applications as well, it looks like. So we'll click on that. The Dolly store. So if you go to the dollystore.com, looks like they've got other applications and things that you can add to your system to make it bigger and better. So they've got Invoice Protect, Bill Recovery. I mean, you can just see there's a whole lot of stuff here. So this is pretty nice. So you can go check out what all they have on dollystore.com. What I'm going to do, because this is now kind of set up, is I'm going to leave it like it is. We can check out some other stuff. So display. So you can kind of pick how you want this thing to be displayed. I don't really know what's the difference here. There we go. So I clicked on it. Okay. Show the company logo in the menu. Hide images. Okay. There's a lot of stuff here you can set up for the display as well. So you can really customize this thing. That's nice. I'm not a ERP person. I'm not a CRM person, so I don't really know exactly what all has to be done. But let's just go back to here. And then I'm going to make this a little bit smaller because I feel like I've got the screen set to a place where maybe it's too big. Maybe not. So if I click that, the menu goes away. Okay. If I go to Tools, there's no tools installed right now. But you have email templates, so there's tools that you can use, and then you can probably add more tools from that store. If we go back to Home, yeah, you come back to your dashboard. So you've got menus, you've got translation. You got default values and files. I mean, there's a lot of stuff here. This is pretty nice. So pretty great. So yeah, this is Dolibarr. This is how you set it up and get it installed. Again, I'm not an ERP or CRM expert, so I'm not really familiar with how to run everything. But if you're interested in ERP or CRM, they have a demo out there. I'll leave this up and running, but I'm going to reset it up. and I'm going to put in some default credentials for the admin user, and then you guys can get in and kind of check things out if you want to. Please, if you do anything or change anything, be friendly, be polite, make sure that everybody can get in and have a good experience. If that is not being done, I will take it down early, but I'll try to leave this up for at least a month after the video goes up. So I'll go back and reset everything, and I'll get it set up with the default admin user and a password. And those will be in the show notes. So if you want to check this out, go check out the show notes over at shownotes.opensourceisawesome.com. And then you can get the default username and password to come here and get logged in. And I'll have it all set up where you can kind of jump in and try to use it. I truly appreciate all my patrons over at Patreon. If you'd like to become a patron as well, jump over to Patreon and subscribe. And, that helps support the show. That helps support the channel and make sure that I can keep putting out content for you guys like this. I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, like, subscribe, tell your friends about it so they can come along on the journey with us. And I'll talk to you next time.